always bitch about groundhogs and talk about dirty water, so. I took down the video because I realized that I was too heated and came off like a chaotic lunatic and seemed more Alex Jones conspiracy theory-y than anything else, but the point still stands.
Alex Jonesy.
I mean, can you, like, seriously? I do feel like this is, we can just start talking about it. If you want to crush this, we can crush it because, and
let's do it.
I was just realizing this as I was prepping for this. We've talked about Groundhog Day an inordinate amount of times on this show for whatever reason. I don't know why it keeps coming up, but
okay. It keeps coming up.
I just realized that. And maybe I've made this accusation before, but this is the first time that we have government data to back it up. And we're going to lose some listeners with this, and I'm sorry because this is calling out. This is making a very, very severe, serious accusation of, I think, what some people would consider an Appalachian icon.
Okay.
Punxsutawney Phil is a fraud.
I feel like we've said this in the past, though.
We probably have. But I think that people were probably like, oh, that's just those Appodlachia boys just talking about how they like buffets and hate groundhogs. But I am dead serious.
Okay. Well,
so, and
tell me, give me your side. What's wrong with him?
Data for this. All right. First of all, let's back up. He is objectively, I think, the most famous groundhog, right? That's who the media always goes to, the legacy media. They always go to Punxsutawney Phil. They don't go to French Creek Freddy in West Virginia, for example. They're always going to...
Is that a real
yeah.
Like a real thing?
Are you kidding me? Yes. I didn't just make that up.
I would be impressed.
No, I'm very disappointed in you that you don't know French Creek Freddy.
I'm sorry, pal. I don't.
Well, I think that's an indictment and also further bolsters my point that...
I think it's an indictment on the education system. Thank God they're ending the Department of Education.
Thank God. Thank God. I mean, because, I haven't learned about French Creek Freddy yet, so where's all our tax dollars going?
But I know all 55 counties of this damn state.
Yeah, thanks, Golden Horseshoe test that I didn't get.
I also did not.
So... I don't think it's really arguable. If you know any groundhog, it is Punxsutawney Phil. And we all just lift up this groundhog, literally, some do, as this great scion of wisdom about predicting the seasons. Well, thank God we have the federal government. There is one agency that is still doing the Lord's work, that is still doing the work of the American taxpayer, and that is NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, because on January 28th of this year, in honor of Groundhog Day, they put out some very hard-hitting research on the accuracy of groundhog predictions. Yeah. So
I was literally just wondering this the other day when he saw a shadow.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
Or didn't see it. Did he see it? Did he not? I don't know.
No, but he was probably wrong based on just if you were to roll the dice here. If you were a betting man, the odds would be in your favor if you bet against him.
Okay.
Oh, not to give away the secret here. So, first of all, what I didn't realize there's a lot of groundhogs that have some skin in the game here. A lot of regional groundhogs. They had 19 groundhogs and what they called alternative hogs. That they selected for this. They had 2 criteria. They must have been prognosticating for at least 20 years, 2 decades, and they must have been active prognosticators as of February 2nd of last year. So, now,
so dumb.
knowing what, it is not dumb, all right? This is what I want our tax dollars spent on. And I swear to God, if Elon Musk and his dumbass coin committee come for Noah, all hell to pay. They will not come for Noah.
Hold on. I know where you're heading for this. I get it. I understand your
Fired up,
your
man.
anger. I get your anger.
Up. Legitimately and illegitimately.
I will tell you, Chuck. If they thought, if they said, where should we cut dollars? Maybe research of Groundhog's Day is like something we could live without.
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Because they're looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. What's one of those words? Fraud. And I'm about to uncover some big fraud right here.
All right.
So, knowing what you know now, there are 19 hogs and alternative hogs in this running. Where don't look at me as being biased here. Take what I've told you aside. Where would you, like, in your heart of hearts, assume that Punxsutawney Phil would rank among those 19?
I mean, first.
Right. At least for at least in top 3, right?
At least first.
Yeah, at least first.
Maybe higher.
Well, you know what Playboy allegedly said about WVU. They didn't include them in the rankings because they didn't want to put professionals among a list of amateurs. Yeah, I don't think that was a real thing, but I like to believe it was. So I was shocked to find out that Punxsutawney Phil wasn't even in the top 3. And I thought, okay, look, sometimes the most famous is not necessarily the best. I mean, look at David Beckham, for example. He was a good soccer player, but he wasn't the best, but arguably, at least at the time he was playing, the most famous. So, anyway, David Beckham. So I thought, okay, perhaps maybe there's at least, like, top 3. I don't know. He didn't crack top 3. That's shocking to me. And there's a racist groundhog that even cracked the top 3. General Beauregard Lee, who literally looks like he lives in a plantation house. I mean,
he's pissed when his shadow gets close to him because it's black. That's how you know winter's 6 more weeks. Okay. How so? Really? All right, so we have some drama in this too. Okay, here's the problem. From 1978, groundhogs only live 8 to 9 years. I just Googled it. It says on average 8 to 9 years. I don't like when people call them hogs. That's fair. Huh? Land squirrels. That's what it is. That is weird. And as you could tell, I'm going to start this too, just so you know. I'm going to have my own groundhog. Because if you look at the last 5 years, okay, I'm with you. Well, because it seems pretty easy, because the last 5 years just all say, nope, no shadow. Well, so that's all we got to beat to get on the list. All right. Okay, here we go. Open this up. what should our groundhog's name be? Up.
Yeah, we'll put it up there and let us know, because we're going to get our own groundhog, and we will make it in one that will last longer than, what was it, 7 to 8 years? Anyway, getting back to the fraud, because so I thought, okay, not even in the top 5. All right. So perhaps like not yet at the fraud level, maybe misleading, okay? Punxsutawney Phil, an inflated reputation at best at this point. And I go down this list, and we're at 5. We're at Gertie the Groundhog from Illinois. We get down to Buckeye Chuck from Ohio. He's not even beating out Buckeye Chuck. French Creek Freddy, referenced him earlier at number 9, 55%, whooped Punxsutawney Phil's ass, beating Dunkirk Dave, who was at 12. Punxsutawney Phil, do you want to take a guess at where he ranks on the list of 19, John?
18th.
Close, 17. You want to know who ranks ahead of him?
Tell me who.
3 taxidermied groundhogs. 3
Wow.
dead, as in not living hogs.
Okay, but how do they know? Never mind.
Oh, and you were technically correct. He was tied for that because Woody the Woodchuck, who is at 18, is tied at 35% with Punxsutawney Phil.
Are woodchucks groundhogs?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
And you know what? I'm looking at this now. I did not realize it. It's number 19, Mojave Max is a tortoise. So
See, I think
Punxsutawney Phil is technically in last place.
And he's losing to some non-groundhogs.
He's losing to Schnoggadal Sammy, the taxidermied groundhog.
I love this.
I just want the world to understand that we have been lied to.
Sounds like you want the world to burn.
It's already burning. Let's be honest. This smoke and mirrors campaign that has been put on by the mainstream media, the global media cabal, that's been propping up this fraudulent groundhog for not years, decades, it's got to end now. And so I initially started this out thinking we could boost up French Creek Freddy as a potentially hometown favorite. At least he was in West Virginia. But okay. now that we're going to have our own groundhog, we are going to compete with Punxsutawney Phil and whoop his goddamn ass.
Can we get Noah on the phone?
We do have a guy.
Here's the problem, though. We got to go 20 years.
That is true. That is a little problematic.
What if I tell them I've been doing this for 20 years?
That could work. I think also that's an arbitrary rule. And what I will say is this.
Where is it in the Constitution? That's my question.
As last I checked, nowhere. And I don't think you're going to find enough states to ratify that shit.
Yeah, good luck.
Maybe Pennsylvania.
Commonwealth, dumb.
Commonwealth. Why do they do? Just get the fuck out of here if you're going to call yourself that. I'm sorry, Kentucky and Virginia. All right, Appalachia, we have a problem.
I know that all 3 of them are here.
We've already talked about Virginia being cucked by the British, so I'm sorry, guys. You got some issues.
It's all right.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, I'm sorry if this has hurt some feelings, but we are here on this podcast to speak some hard truths.
Just want to tell the truth.
Yeah. Look, and John, you can feel free to disagree with me. I mean, look, I don't know how you feel about this, but
I never looked at the research, okay? And I'm also going to be honest, it always seemed kind of dumb that we relied on an animal to be our meteorologist for 6 weeks. So, seemed pretty dumb. Seems dumber now. So, you did make that point pretty clear. And, yeah, I mean, I think it is... I'm just going to say it. I think it's as much of a scam as the 2020 election. You
heard it here first, folks. Stop the steal. Stop the squeal is what it would be.
Stop the squeal.
I will just say that
Hashtag show me the shadow.
Show me the shadow government. I would just say that for you all that are experiencing some hurt feelings out there, you lefties out there, just remember that you were the people that were chanting, "Follow the science." This is the science. This is the evidence. This is the math. Follow it, even if it hurts, even if it does not validate your opinion. I'm sure Punxsutawney Phil, he's a nice guy, but he's been lying to you.
I think he's a con man.
You're right. You know what? I am too nice on this show.
I've always said that about you.
He's a con artist. He is a grifter. He is a modern day. I called him. He is a modern day Elizabeth Holmes. He is the Theranos of fucking, what is it I called him? The Theranostradamus is what he is.
I mean, he makes my biological father sound like a good man. That's how big of a con man he is.
You heard it here first, folks.
And he was a professional con man.
That's a serious allegation.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean,
look, y'all know where we stand on this now.
Just seems. And okay, I want to go on record though. Okay, because I've always said that I think that there's a con man gene out there, right? You either have it or you don't. And I've always said that I have it, right? And it's what makes me a good defense attorney and good in front of juries.
Not great for selling the show right now, but
terrible for selling this show. But listen, I use it for good. That's my point. I use the con man gene for good because it, to try to help people. Now, some people don't use it for good, biological father being one, and two, this groundhog. That being said, I'm, as a fellow con man gene holder, I'm impressed by this groundhog. I'm very impressed because the scheme has gone on. The con has been on and on and on. I want to be in the meetings with these groundhogs as they're preparing for this day, for their day. I think this is fantastic.
I won't be in the room where it happened. Why didn't Lin-Manuel Miranda write a damn
Groundhog's Day
musical
song?
Why didn't this make it into Hamilton?
I don't know.
That's the question that we need to ask. You're right. He is. We'll give him that. He is a hell of a con man.
It's impressive.
Which makes this show even more impressive that we have called him out for several years now, bringing the science to you folks.
He's welcome on the show anytime.
Yeah.
To explain himself.
Yeah, welcome on the show. We have always said that. We will accept any species on this podcast to come speak with us and defend their very paltry record of predicting seasonal outcomes. I am upset, not just personally, but on behalf of you, the listener, and of the American people.
For what?
For being lied to by this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I knew, I had a feeling. I was just like, man, Chuck just seems a little off tonight. And now I know why. It's just because you're so upset that this injustice continues to occur.
It is. I'm very upset by it. And thank God I've got my cornbread hemp CBD gummies to calm me down.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to sleep.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to function. I would be breaking down walls. My wife would divorce me. I would be out on the streets within a day. That's a bit of an exaggeration.
Chuck would not do well on the streets.
This groundhog has just had me by the balls, guys. I don't know why. Cornbread Hemp has been a sponsor for a number of years, and they're a great company. They're doing wonderful things in the state of Kentucky, and it's because they have a great product. They are flower-only, full-spectrum hemp and CBD products. We love the gummies. I recently got the watermelon flavor, and they were freaking delicious. They've got a CBD and THC in them, and I really enjoy them. John, you've had some of their products too, I know.
Oh, I love it. I actually went to put an order in the other day because I missed it so much. It's, for somebody as tense as me, it's nice to have something there to kind of just relax.
It is. Tense like a banjo string, and that's great because our promo code is BANJO, BANJO. You can use that at checkout to get how much off, John?
20%. 10. 25.
25%. Almost the accuracy prediction of Punxsutawney Phil. 25% off at checkout.
Glad you got that.
Yeah, I wish it was 33. We're going to try, or 35. We're going to try to bump it up there, but 25% off at checkout.
And look, here's the good news. This Punxsutawney Phil guy, he doesn't use cornbread hemp.
Yeah. And look
if
what
he
happened.
If he did, I'm not quite sure he'd ever miss.
Yeah, it really is a shame that he hasn't. And I think that that's really the evidence. Correlation does, in fact, mean causation at this point. And
on everything. On everything.
100%. 100%. So don't be like Punxsutawney Phil. Go to cornbreadhemp.com. Get yourself a bunch of good stuff. Use the promo code BANJO, BANJO at checkout. Get yourself some good CBD. And tell them that we sent you. We love Cornbread Hemp, and we appreciate them for sponsoring this show.
Woo!
One brief thing before we get into our interview that I wanted to bring up, because I know we just talked a bunch of shit about a groundhog, so I figure we should... I wanted to bring up something semi-serious first.
Okay.
Not that wasn't.
I was going to say, I thought it was probably the most serious thing we were going to talk about.
Oh, well, I'm undermining my credibility once again.
Once again.
Yep, here we go. This has been brought up a number of times, and I think that it's getting attention now, I think, locally, but it just makes me really angry and sad that this is even a thing. Have you seen much of what's happening in Mingo County, West Virginia, with their water?
The water issue? Yeah, I've been watching.
Yeah, so this has happened, for a long time. And so basically what's happening is they've just had an ongoing water crisis, I guess is a broad way of putting it, for a number of years, but it's been off and on. It's hard to really explain. I know my sister lived down there several times that she couldn't use the water in her faucet. There were times where she would turn it on and it would come out looking orange like mud, like you would just had dipped it into a puddle of mud. And there were people that more recently had brought bottles of water that looked like that they had filled from their faucet to a public service commission meeting to show them. So about a week and a half ago, the West Virginia Public Service Commission finally announced an investigation into the Mingo County Public Service District following a prolonged water outage. And so I wanted to just mention this just so people were aware of it. And also just to shout out a couple of people, Reverend Brad Davis and Reverend Caitlin Ware. I'm not sure who runs the account, Holler Gospel on Twitter. It's one of them. They've been sharing a lot of valuable information about this. I think they live down there. And West Virginia Watch has also been reporting on it, but they had mentioned that as recently as a week ago, more than 2,000 customers in Mingo County, which, if you don't know, is one of the most rural, probably one of the poorest counties in West Virginia, probably one of the poorest counties in the country, right smack dab in the middle of coal country. More than 2,000 customers on the water system were left without adequate water service due to complications, quote unquote, with the district's sediment basin, according to a news release sent last Friday, or 2 Fridays ago, by the state health department. And they had a boil water advisory for, it looks like 3 weeks exactly. And in some parts of the county, they still have a boil water advisory. It is. And I don't, have you ever worked with like local public service districts before? I didn't know if you did in your last job or not.
Oh yeah, that's all I did.
Okay. So, like most of the ones, especially in these small counties, they just don't have any money. And so their infrastructure is like shit.
Oh yeah. I mean, they have to take out massive loans from places like the USDA, which are 40-year loans on multiple millions of dollars. They end up getting, like, American Water is always around trying to buy them out. Like, that's the thing.
Is that a private company?
It is. It's located in Charleston. They try to buy them out, but every time a place like that gets bought out, American comes in and raises the prices, from my understanding. Mm-hmm. And so people try, these local public service districts try to, maintain as much as they can. It's just tough.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not going to like pretend like I know the full extent of like what is causing the problem. I would say that, like, I mean,
outdated infrastructure and not enough customers.
Right. Like, not enough customers to support a tax base to fund it. Right. Yeah.
Well, it's not even, that's the thing though. You got to remember, it's not based off tax rates though. Like, there's nothing, it's based off consumerism. It's based off what is consumed and people who pay it.
That's a good point.
So like, that's the problem, is there's nobody
usage
there.
Fees, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to spread that usage out, but if there's not enough people on the lines, what are you going to do? But they can't afford to expand to other regions because they've got these issues. So,
and especially when places like that are losing, I haven't looked at the statistics. I'm just assuming this to be correct. I will look, and if I'm wrong, I'll correct myself next episode. I'm assuming that Mingo County is losing more people than they're gaining. And
I would say, yeah.
So their public service district has basically no money. I was reading in that West Virginia Watch article in 2019, their director said they were paying $100,000 a month in just bond payments. That doesn't account for payroll, equipment, maintenance, anything like that. Just payments on bonds.
Yeah, I could see that. That sounds about fair. I mean, and that's why a lot of these areas, these smaller areas, are trying to consolidate into into one group. So like multiple PSDs will turn into one and create a board. And the reason they do that is because when they do it and they have they have a lot of debt that's not able to be paid, USDA can essentially write some of that off. So,
or they can do like a revolving loan fund or something.
Yeah, I mean there's multiple things that they can look at.
Yeah, it's really hard because, like you said, I mean, there's not a lot of options for a place like Mingo County, and one of the things that is proposed is a rate increase. Like, that's always for consumers, and that's bullshit because these people like that, they can't afford that. I mean, and they should not be bearing the cost of this, which is like, I don't know what the solution is. It would be nice if there was federal money that was released that could go down here, that could be brought down here to help with infrastructure improvements. But
there is, I mean, but there is,
and why?
That's the thing.
But my question is like, why is it not getting to them?
Because imagine what Mingo County is going through right now, and then times that by 10,000, because they're not it's all across the country that these infrastructure issues are occurring. It's not just Mingo County. So that's the tough part, right? USDA only has so much funding as well. That's usually where the money comes from. You could go through your state, but they only have so much money to give out. So that's the tough part is, I used to think, why doesn't X, Y, and Z happen? And then you look at the money that goes into it. And a lot of the times they have to, unfortunately, I sound like an asshole, but it's like a business, right? They have to justify to the higher ups why that money should go there. And so when you have 50 people in a PSD versus 5,000, who do you think they're going to go with?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. The problem is like the problems there all center around not having enough money. So it's like, other than getting more money, there's nothing they can do. And like,
no,
when you have these huge infrastructure problems, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's like,
oh yeah,
it's only gonna
change. It won't change.
I mean, other than getting more money from the government, there's just not much else you can do. And I don't know. It makes me sad for them because it's like the people that live there are just, they're shit out of luck. Because also, if you live in Mingo County, depending on where you live, going to get bottled water is a huge trip. My sister, when she lived in Gilbert, unless they had some at the Dollar General, she had to go at least 45 minutes to Logan, to the Walmart in Logan, to get water. And that's if there was not a coal truck overturned on the road.
I believe that. And I want to say too, I'm not saying that the reason that I'm giving is good. I'm just telling you that is the reason that this happens.
No, I get it. There's realities of bureaucracy.
Yeah, like that's the tough part. There's only so much money, and it's tough to justify it. And unfortunately, that's just the crappy part.
Well, and that's why it has to be government money, because otherwise, if you're relying on private companies, they're expecting a return on an investment. And that's often why lots of those places in hollers don't have broadband, because there's no incentive for those private companies to be laying down line or providing in those areas.
Yep.
Shitty. Anyway, I mean, I don't have much else to say on that. I just wanted to raise awareness on it and let people know there are people down that that are beating the drums and raising hell on this, and good on
Now,
them.
the other thing, the big thing, though, is it should not matter how many people are on the line when it comes to the health and safety
100%.
of people. Like, that's different, right?
Yeah.
Now, if a rate increase is is the issue, I understand the need for rate increases. I see it. It sucks, but I know the numbers behind it. None of that should occur, though, for the safety and health of people. That should only be occurring because they need, they're providing a good service and they are trying to maintain that service.
Yeah, I think in this situation, it's like there is a clear health problem.
Exactly.
And
yes.
there is a clear failure in
that's different.
Anyone to do anything. It's like, it just doesn't seem, to me, the takeaway that at least I've felt is that there was just such a lack of urgency from any state entity, at least for a long time, to give the proper attention to this. I don't know. That's from my...
That's right.
I'm
that's
obviously
fair.
very disconnected from it, but yeah, it's really shameful. And I just hate that because like these people are so... Like people in Mingo County are so left behind in so many ways.
Yeah, 100%.
It's terrible. Anyway, moving on from that, we've got a great interview today, John.
Yeah, we do.
One of my favorites, I think we've done. Interview today with returning guest of the show, Emily Calandrelli, but you may know her better as the Space Gal. I had to write down her list of accolades because I couldn't remember them all.
I think that's fair.
MIT aerospace engineer, Emmy-nominated TV show host of Emily's Wonder Lab on Netflix, #1 New York Times bestselling author. Most importantly, the 100th woman to ever fly to space, and the second West Virginia woman to ever fly to space. Incredible. And in fact, just today, the Space Foundation announced that she'd been selected for the 2025 Douglas S. Murrow Public Outreach Award, an honor that she now shares with Tom Hanks and Neil deGrasse Tyson, to name a few.
Very cool.
Yeah, she is a really, really incredible person, someone that I am proud to know and call a friend, and someone who I think is just a perfect shining example of someone who came from West Virginia, wears it proudly with her wherever she goes, and is just a really, really cool person.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So she talked with us about her space flight, and if you don't know, I mean, I won't talk too much about it. She goes in great detail about it, but it was it was quite an interesting journey for her to even get to this point. It was a lifelong dream of hers, and she finally was able to do it. And it's just a really, really cool story. And in fact, this week she is releasing the video from her space flight. So I think if it comes out in time, I'll link to it in our show notes. But that'll be really cool to have that come out at the same time. Anyway, yeah. So let's get to the interview. Welcome back. I am so happy that you're here. Do we get to call you Space Gal, or do we call you the Been to Space Gal? Like what is the updated moniker now?
Space Gal?
Yeah. What is this now?
In Space
Astronaut Gal? What is it?
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I finally lived up to the name that I created for myself like 15 years ago.
I think that was just a testament right there. Which I prophecy maybe.
Yep.
I think that's a great place to start. So I think I, like many people, including many West Virginians, watched as you became the 100th woman in space, which was incredible. I cannot begin to describe how proud all of us were. I would love to start by you telling us, at least what you can, of how that all happened.
Yeah, so my gosh, I have been trying to go to space for many years, basically applying to every contest, applying to NASA, but mostly focusing on the commercial route. And so I have been in conversations with the people who are organizing these flights for years. So I've been in conversation with Blue Origin for years. And essentially, because the flights cost so much money, someone like me needs to identify somebody to sponsor their flight. And so I had been trying, let me turn off my notifications so you don't have those in the background. So someone like me needs to, why can you hear that? And I have the do not disturb on. I think it's just the Facebooks of it all in the background. Let me make sure those are exited out of. Okay, those are gone. So someone like me needs to partner with a number of different sponsors to sponsor my space flight. And so I was in conversation with Blue to try to see if they could offer me a seat that I could then bring to sponsors and be like, I'm telling you. Sorry, guys.
These tech oligarchs know that we're talking bad about them.
When you're an astronaut, people want to talk to you.
I know.
That's what it is.
Okay. So I've been trying to work with Blue Origin to offer me a seat that I could then go fundraise around. But the challenge is they needed guarantee that the flight would be paid for, but the sponsors needed a guarantee that I would fly. And it was a chicken and the egg problem. But eventually I had talked to Blue Origin and I was like, listen, I will guarantee the funding without a guarantee of the
Nice.
Smart.
Part of the deal. Love it.
Our entire life savings on the line. I spoke with my husband and I was like, this is the dream. I feel confident that I will be able to find the sponsors who believe in this vision, who can see the value in what I bring to their business and the value in sending someone like me to space. And so we put everything we had on the line for this flight. And so Blue offered me the seat. I then went out to every wealthy person, every foundation, every sponsor brand I'd ever worked with and said, do you all want to be part of this? And, I got a lot of no's from people who just didn't see the value, didn't think that it would bring a lot of media attention to their business. They just, they didn't want to be part of it. But when I went to Marshall saw the value in sending a West Virginia woman to space, saw the value in my 3 million followers who I could then speak to the value of Marshall and their aviation program, to speak to their Marshall for All, Marshall Forever program, where they're covering tuition for all these people who are going to Marshall University. And so they were one of my first big sponsors that sponsored a portion of the flight. And so because of them, really, I was able to secure the seat and fly into space.
I love that there is that West Virginia connection. I mean, it would have been cool regardless, let's be clear. But the fact that, Marshall University was the one that came through and was like, we will do this. I think that just speaks not one to the integrity of the people that work there, but to them believing that there's value in that. There's value in a West Virginian, not just any person, but a West Virginia woman doing this. I think that's really, really cool.
Absolutely. And because of that, I have now been able to speak about Marshall University on the national stage in front of millions of people and bring their university to people who may never have considered that university or that aviation program. Because the people who follow me are interested in science and space and aviation. And so now I get to be a spokesperson for that university and help increase enrollment, bring their aviation program, which is just pumping out pilots like right and left. It's a really, really good aviation program to a national stage.
I would be willing to bet that most people that aren't from West Virginia probably, other than maybe seeing the Matthew McConaughey movie, don't even know about Marshall University.
Great movie.
It is a great movie. Great actor too. Very, very multi-talented actor. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great point and really, really a really cool aspect of that. I want to ask you, going into this space flight, I want to get your thoughts on what it was like and everything, the feeling of being in space, because that's just, to me, incomprehensible. But I want you to be honest. Were you nervous at all? I mean, what was that feeling like? The night before, or before you got into the I guess, was it, what is it called, the capsule, the rocket
capsule.
capsule?
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I So I'm an aerospace engineer and I understand the risks that were involved. This is not a skydiving trip. This isn't a bungee jumping trip. Like I knew that this was going to be the riskiest thing that I had ever done. But it was also my dream for 2 decades to be able to do it. And so I took a very calculated risk, and Blue Origin was the only rocket that I would fly on to suborbital space for this one reason. Blue Origin has a flight escape system, meaning if something were to happen on the rocket, like an explosion of some sort, there is an ejection that can happen where the capsule is pushed off of the rocket, the explodey part of the vehicle, and just pushed away to a safe location to land on land. And that ejection would not be comfortable. You'd experience 15 G forces. Like, it would not be a very fun experience, but it would be a survivable one. And because of that flight escape system, that was the only vehicle that I was going to fly on to suborbital space to secure this dream. So I was very lucky that it happened with Blue Origin. But I will say, even with that in mind, like, it's still a rocket. You're essentially like sitting on top of a controlled bomb. And I was nervous in the months, not just the day, night before, like the months leading up to the flight, because I have small kids. And I knew that I wasn't just risking my life, I was risking their mom's life. And so I created this document that I titled In Case of Anomaly. And I wrote letters to my kids. I had ideas for birthday presents up until they were 18 years old. I wrote them letters for them on their wedding day when they have their first child. I talked about like love and life and all of these things that I wanted to leave my kids with should I not be here. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like that document written through just like tears and tears and tears. But I wanted to be prepared and really think through my death should it happen. And yeah, so I was pretty nervous. But then once I got there, we went through all of the emergency scenarios. Like, what happens if there's a fire? What happens if the air is compromised? What happens if you need to emergency egress? And we like went through every single scenario so many times that we knew it by muscle memory. And after I had done that, the fear and anxiety I felt going into it was then replaced with plans. And because of that, on the day of the launch, like all I felt was adrenaline. Like there was still like probably fear mixed in there too, but it was more adrenaline and excitement.
It's insane to write those letters. Like, I can't imagine having to do that. I also don't think it's a terrible idea to have those on hand. I think more people should do that. I do think it just in life in general, I think that's something. It's like planning a will, like the same type 100%. Of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my mental, emotional will.
100. Yeah, I mean, that people always think of assets, but they don't think of thoughts. Like, they don't think, this is what my kids will really want, is my point of view. So I think that's great. I think everyone should do that. So Marshall obviously paid for the flight. I'll go on the negative. The negative. Sorry. Paid for a flight. I don't know how much this costs. I'm sure it's not cheap.
Paid for the whole flight.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not a very cheap thing. So going the commercial route, there's been, I guess, some negative connotations that I've seen when it comes to like these commercial spaceships.
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't understand that. It seems like something that's kind of out there. I don't know if you have a take on that, but it seemed odd that was some of the stuff I was seeing.
Yeah, I think it's totally understandable. I think the wealth inequality that we have currently is so drastic that seeing a extremely wealthy person use their wealth in such a visual way is triggering and can feel very obnoxious, right? Like there's just so much wealth inequality that anytime we see billionaires billionairing, it is annoying. And I think this is one very visual way that very wealthy people can spend their money. So I understand the like annoyance with it. But there are just very other less visual ways that billionaires spend their money. And with this, I think there's the added benefit of like the way that these billionaires can then use this flight, the way that these billionaires are often affected by this flight, because the people who are flying on these vehicles are often also very active philanthropists, and being able to see the planet from beyond our atmosphere, see that thin blue line, it impacts what they do when they come back down. And so I think there's inherent value in that. And there are much more menacing ways that very wealthy people spend their money.
I think that that's where I was kind of on that side, is like they could be doing a lot worse with their cash than like going and seeing, going to outer space. So I'll ask this as well. When you went to outer space, I mean, what's the process when you're up there? What are you doing?
Like, well, just to like high level, it's the coolest thing I will ever do in my entire life.
For sure.
It was everything I hoped it would be and so much more. So you get on the launch pad, and like this is after a week of training. You get on the launch pad, you're sitting in the capsule, and they do the full countdown. And for us, we had a picture perfect launch, no delays, no like perfect weather. Everything was just wonderful. It felt almost like an airplane ride where you were scheduled to launch at 8:30 a.m. and you launch at 8:30 a.m., no delays. And you hear the countdown, and when it gets to 0, the engines ignite and you see the flames engulf around the windows, and inside the capsule, it's a glow with this like orangey red flame. And like my eyes go so wide because I'm just like overloaded with all of these emotions. There's a little bit of rumble, but it's not too violent. And then you accelerate super quickly off of that launch pad, and you watch the earth fall beneath you. And outside of your window, you see the sky change from bright blue to light blue to black. And it is just the coolest thing because you've never seen a black this black. It is the absence of color, the absence of light, and it is like filling your purview. And then when you look back down at the earth, then you're seeing the biggest thing your eyes have ever seen, which is like the way that I think of it. It's like when you've seen the Grand Canyon for the first time, or you go and see like a dam for the first time, or the ocean. Like it takes your brain a while to comprehend that like what you are currently seeing is bigger than anything else you've ever seen, anything else human eyes have really ever been able to see. And so seeing that, I was overwhelmed because you're trying to take in new contrasts and colors and details, and I'm just trying to like memorize this thing I'm looking at. And the floating is disorienting too. Your feet are on the ceiling and your head is on the floor and your hair is flying all around, and there are things floating in the capsule. And it's the best feeling, the coolest thing in the world.
See, that's where, Chuck, I don't know about you, but that's where like her education and thought process is totally different than like just me, like being the dummy that I am. As soon as she mentioned like, the fire and all these colors, I'm like, I would have been like, we're on fire. It's over. See you guys. Like, like that's it. I would have freaked out. So way more courage than I've got. I'll tell you that.
I will say, I feel like I can do literally anything now.
I can.
Like, it is truly the scariest thing I've ever done. And I'm like, I did that. So like whatever I'm about to do next, like I can do that too.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it, but when you put it into this perspective where this was the biggest thing you have ever looked at, that human eyes have ever been on, I think that really is a great way of looking at it, because it's incomprehensible to like me or to John. I mean, and you're one of only 100 women, one of only a handful of people that have ever seen that. And that's something that's really special. You brought with you, I guess Blue Origin's policy is you're allowed to bring certain things with you. And you brought a bunch of different things with you that had very significant meaning to them. And I'm wondering if you could talk about a few of them that were really important to you and why you chose to bring them with you.
Yeah, so we were able to bring 3 pounds of stuff with us. And I was a little sad because I weighed like half and sometimes a third of some of the other passengers that have flown. And I'm like, do I not get a little bit extra? We're all paying the same amount. But we each get 3 pounds. And one of the most meaningful things that I was able to bring up was my dad's college ring. because my dad grew up in poverty in West Virginia. He was the youngest of 4 kids to a single mom. They grew up without a house, without a car, and he worked since he was 11 years old to just build a better life for himself. And he was the first person in his family to go to college. So his college ring is his most valuable prized possession that represents like where he came from and all of the perseverance and work it took to bring our family to middle class where I grew up. And so I wanted to take his college ring with me into space to sort of show him that like not only were you able to do everything you did to bring our family to middle class, but now we've made it to the stars. Like that perseverance, that grit, all of that hard work since you were so little, like it all paid off.
That's so
And
cool.
so I get like emotional talking about it because it's just like,
Yeah.
just very cool to imagine him when he was so young, to imagine like his daughter being the 100th woman in space. Like who would have ever thought that that would even be on the table, that that would even be possible. So the college ring was something that I am really fond of. And then I also brought pearls to give to my girlfriends because the way that I think about a pearl is I think about it as like a disruptor of a system, an agitator. It's created because of a granule of sand that gets into a clam, something that shouldn't be there. Like this grain of sand should not be there. It's an agitator. It's an outsider. And to fight against this outsider, the clam puts a secretion on the sand over and over and over again to sort of prevent it from having any effect on the system. And the result of this agitator is something beautiful, this pearl. And I think of a lot of the women in my life as an agitator, as a disruptor of a system, something that they're often the only women in the rooms that they occupy, and they feel like they shouldn't be there. But in the process, they create something beautiful. And so I brought these pearls up to give to my girlfriends. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is I brought a bunch of star charms. I'm actually wearing one right now that has the number 100 engraved on them. It was a little bit of a risk because I wasn't sure if I was going to be the 100th woman until like a few weeks before taking a bet that it would be. And because I had to have them made like a few weeks ahead of time. But I'm giving these to little girls on the internet who go viral for like, you know, dressing up as a scientist for career day, or they talk about like their dreams of becoming an astronaut. And I want to sort of encourage their dreams by giving them a star from space.
That's so cool. I love that. That's really awesome. And also, you brought up your dad. Incredible suit choices on his part. I just wanted to say the man has style, and have to compliment him for that.
He does. I told him at the after party of the space flight, I was like, you guys feel free to just like wear anything space themed. I think it'll be really fun if we all come in like space themed clothing. And he was like, bet. And Amazon and got a cosmic Amazon suit, both top and bottom, and then also cosmic shoes to match. And I love
Incredible.
it.
Great theme. Great theme. I don't know how long we're going, but something I was wondering, and I have to be honest too, because I was thinking about this episode, and I realized that you were the 100th woman in space, and I don't know, I guess lack of knowledge on my part of that, 100 seemed like a lot. And then I started to do research because I was like, I don't know what this means. And I started to compare it to the men who have gone to space. And I was like, oh shit, 100 is nothing. Like, so I guess I'd love to hear, what has that route been like for women in space? Is it getting any better? Is there any difference? I did some research just briefly and saw like what some of the early female astronauts had to go through, and it was some pretty awful stuff. Can you tell the listeners like how that journey, I guess, has been for women? You can't speak for them, but maybe you can educate.
Definitely. Yeah. So far there's been around 700 people who have gone to space, and only 100 of those have been women. And the reason for that mostly is because for the longest time, women were just not allowed to go to space. The only people who were sending women into space in the early days were the Russians, and NASA just wasn't accepting female participants. I think the reasoning was because they required them to be fighter pilots, and then women were not allowed to be fighter pilots. So even though they were getting flight hours and there were incredible female pilots, they just simply weren't allowed to enter the test pilot program to get that qualification to go to NASA to then apply to become an astronaut. And so for many years, women just were excluded from the industry altogether. It's gotten a lot better, but to kind of put a story on how it is today, we have the Artemis program, which is the program to go back to the moon. And it's called Artemis, which is the twin sister of Apollo. And it's called that because we are now bringing the first woman to the moon. So the Artemis program is supposed to be like, you know what? We're in 2025. We are bringing women to space, to the moon. And on the very first human Artemis mission, out of the 4 astronauts that are going, only one of them is a woman. So even when we have a female-centered space program, space mission, only 25% of the occupants are women. And that, to me, feels a little bit like we're being tricked into thinking that things are very progressive nowadays. And I'm like, I think 100% of the occupants should be women. And the fact that there are only 1 out of the 4 in there, I think that we still have a long way to go. Because there's this, especially under the current administration, there's this idea that if you open it up to women, you are somehow lowering the standards of qualifications. When in reality, there are so countless people who are qualified to do this work. It is not something that like only a single person on the entire planet can do. Like it's hard work, but it's stuff that many, many, many talented people can do. And so there's just like an endless number of talented female applicants, and to only pick one out of the 4 feels like intentionally preventative.
Yeah. So it's interesting you brought up the Artemis program, because I actually wrote down a question to ask you about it, thinking that this is going to be a completely off-topic thing that I'm going to bring up. So glad you brought it up organically.
Perfect.
Well, because I was thinking about it, I actually went to the Kennedy Space Center a couple of months ago, which saw you there on the bus with the video. Very cool.
Yep.
And thinking about that program with respect to the new administration, I'm just kind of curious what you think the future of that program looks like, especially, I know that it was started, I think, in 2017, and now that I think the next planned phase is phase 2 in 26, where they're going to orbit the moon. Do you expect like that all to continue on course, or is there an expected disruption in that? Because, I mean, it's a pretty ambitious program. They want to build a base on the moon.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Chuck, you have opened up a can of worms, because
Sorry.
the talk of the space town, because as you know, Elon Musk is very close with the next president, the current president, and Elon Musk is the operator of the president. I'm not sure what his current role is, the founder of SpaceX. And so right now, currently, Artemis is using something called the SLS rocket, the Space Launch System. This is the most powerful rocket that humans have ever built. It's the rocket that launched the test Orion around the moon last year, I believe, or maybe December of the year prior. And that was the intended rocket for the Artemis program. Now, the big question is, will SLS be canceled to allow for SpaceX's rocket instead? Which, to be honest, is not that controversial of an opinion, because the SLS was not a good rocket in terms of efficiency or costs anyways. It was a rocket that was designed to keep congressional members happy and jobs in their state. It was not a rocket designed to be the most optimal, cost-efficient rocket in the land. And so it's way behind budget, way behind schedule, way over budget, and just it's been not a good rocket in terms of efficiency. And so I think many people have been pushing for this for a long time, and now they actually have the power to make these decisions and to cancel the SLS and to replace it with SpaceX's rocket. So that's what everybody is waiting for. They're waiting for the cancellation of SLS and then SpaceX kind of swooping in for those contracts. And that I mean, honestly, most people in the space industry are excited about that because that'll be a more efficient way to do moon business. But we'll see. I think the question is, first, you have to tear a lot of things down, cancel a lot of things. But then the follow-up question is, do you have the support and the ability to build it back up once you've canceled everything? So I think there's a few steps that people are keeping their eye on, and we're hopeful that it doesn't disrupt the Artemis program too much in the process.
It's interesting to know about the SLS rocket, and I honestly, I didn't think about the fact that those programs now will be under more scrutiny from Elon Musk, and he will have much more of a role in what happens, more so than he already does, which, I mean, probably half of his net worth is based off of government contracts anyway. So, well, I mean, I could talk to you all day about space stuff. My last question that I have is unrelated to that. I will rein myself in because I know that we're running at time. I don't want to give John a chance to ask any that he has, but I wanted to ask you about what your goals are next, because I feel like this is such a I don't know, otherworldly accomplishment, if I may. Where do you go from here?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, right now the goal is to get the story out to as many people as possible. So right now I have a YouTube video in the works, I have a documentary in the works, and I have a TV episode in the works around the spaceflight to get it to people in different formats and different ways. So that's one of the things, is just to get the story and the experience out there to as many kids as possible. I really want to be able to bring it specifically to classrooms in West Virginia for obvious reasons. Right now, the challenge I have is that I have to do all the work to pay for the spaceflight because I wasn't able to find a sponsor who could cover the whole thing. And so I have a lot of work to do to pay off this space flight. So the room for volunteer work is minimal. I was really trying to solve that issue by finding a larger sponsor for the space flight so that I could free up my time for a lot of volunteer work. But that didn't end up happening. But I still want to be able to do that. Being in California, it's just hard to make my way over to West Virginia that often. But yeah, I think getting the story out there in as many ways as possible is really the goal and the next step. I have a few other projects in the works. I've launched my YouTube channel, and I have a book for adults in the works as well. So few irons in the fire.
I need to read that so I can understand half this conversation. My last question is, and you've mentioned this not on this show, but why is it important to you to represent West Virginia wherever you go?
Yeah, I think for anybody who grew up in the state, you know that we latch on to positive representation. Growing up, I memorized the names of Jennifer Garner and Steve Harvey and Homer Hickam and Chuck Yeager and Katherine Johnson and just all of these names that you are they did it. And so I can too. I have a little bit of them within me because they grew up in a similar way that I did. And it just really makes your world feel bigger. And so for me, I am just trying to provide a little bit of that same magic that I felt knowing those names growing up to other kids who want to see themselves in space and in science. And so we just don't have a ton of people who really reference the state in a positive way that frequently. Oftentimes when we hear our name in the news, it is not for positive things. And I want to try to combat that negativity with some positivity and just always bring it back to, and also I'm from West Virginia, and also pepperoni rolls, and
That's
also
right.
Marshall University. And so it's just, I want to be helpful, and I want to be a sign of what somebody who comes from West Virginia can do.
Great.
I love that. That is more than we can ask for, and I think that's the kind of representation that we want, and we've always wanted, and I think that you're the perfect example for that. So I know that every time you mention West Virginia, we appreciate it, and I know that everybody in West Virginia does too. Always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for doing what you do. I know that you are an inspiration, not just to West Virginians, but to women and girls everywhere. And I just really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us about your journey. And it was really cool. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you. And there's one thing I forgot to mention that's more West Virginia related. Is it okay if I just say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So another thing I brought into space was a flash drive. And I wanted to think of a way to help bring my followers into space with me. And so I told them that, like, with a suggested donation of $5, I would bring their dream to the stars, their wish upon the stars.
Yeah.
And they just filled out a form, and I asked them to, if they could, donate $5. And we ended up being able to raise, I want to say, like, almost $40,000 for children in foster care in West Virginia.
Wow.
And Chuck, you helped me find this organization and pick this organization, because my goal was to try to find a way to be helpful to an organization who really needed it. And you helped me identify this organization, the Children's Home Society of West Virginia, because in West Virginia, children are going into foster care at twice the rate than any other state in the nation. It's a huge crisis that needs a lot of resources. And so thank you, Chuck, for helping me find that organization to be able to, leverage the space flight to help West Virginia.
Yeah, of course. I was honored to help in even a very, very small way. So I appreciate being asked. And I would just say that my sister and I both did that and wrote letters to my niece, her daughter. So her dreams went up there with you. So that was really cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again so much. And best wishes in the future. And again, congratulations. This is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. It was good talking to you.
Likewise.
Okay.
Talk
Bye.
soon.
Bye. No, there's no beef this week.
Okay. No beef this week other than the Democratic Party sucks, and we have very little hope that they have learned their lessons.
They haven't.
Tune in next week to see if the Democrats have. We're going to have a weekly check-in with the Democratic Party to see if they've learned their lesson. Will they come to support the working class? Will they learn to not kowtow to billionaires and oligarchs and warmongers? Tune in next week, folks.
Will they ever have substance behind their policies?
Will they ever have substance behind their policies, or will they just be a bunch of expensive goddamn suits? Tune in next week.